Ian, I'm such a fan of your work. Some of my favorite novels have been out of your brain, and I'm sure you hear that, and you've heard it for many years. How does that sit with you that so many people have read your work?
Occasionally, and this is the biggest and best review I ever get, is when young couples come and introduce me to their children, and they met because he spotted her reading one of my books that he knew backwards, and it was an immediate chat-up line. They dated, they married, they had children. I think I have a picture dating back in the late 80s, being in Rome in a bookshop, surrounded by 5 children. So when Auden says poetry makes nothing happen, well, there is one thing.
Yes, I was going to say, if I saw my husband reading one of your books, except for maybe On Chesil Beach, because
yeah, that's
not exactly romantic, that might be all it takes for me to fall back in love.
Chesil Beach was a kind of birth control.
Yes, it was.
World population dipped for a bit.
What do you remember what year that came out? Because I'm nearly certain I was on my honeymoon when I read that.
Well, it must have been about
2010.
10.
Yep, 2008.
Yeah.
I had just gotten married, and I was like, does this hit too close to home? I'm not sure.
It's amazing. There was a lovely movie we made with Saoirse Ronan. And she was magical in that role, just as she had been in the movie of Atonement, of really getting in the skin of the part, getting right in there. And we had an awful lot of letters after that. People who don't read books
just
go
watch
to
the
movies.
films.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, what we're speaking about now for people that are fans of your work is the humanity that fills your stories, your novels, your short stories, and has for many years. Where do you remember when you knew it was that you wanted to write?
I'm like most writers, I was a passionate reader. And in my first or maybe second year at college, at university, I suddenly realized that literature was a kind of conversation that was going on down through the centuries, and that anyone could join in. And so that was a very important moment, that you too could just get a block of paper and a pencil, and it's not like trying to set up a movie, But so I had to write a lot of terrible things. I mean, probably the worst radio play that ever was written. I wrote screenplays, but no one's commissioned them, and I never expected them to. But I just liked the idea of it. But then slowly, by the time I'd left and I was a postgraduate in another university, I started writing there. It was great just to arrive in a fresh town where nobody knew me. And on the very first night I was there, I decided that I would write a story and I would not move from this room, and I would just write all night until I finished the story. And it was so romantic. 4 a.m. I was still at it, and I felt so heroic and pleased with myself. Around about 10 in the morning I finished. And it was all in longhand, so the boring business of typing it up would have to wait for another day. But I was very, very much filled with this sort of heroic sense of what a writer could be.
Was it any good?
Yeah, it was very weird. like all my early stories. Nobody spoke about warm humanity in
your early
about
work?
my early work. No, it was too dark. Yeah, it was published in my first volume of stories.
Your newest novel, there is a darkness to it because it is set between two timelines, one in the 100 years from now, when climate change has ravished our world. But I still found it hopeful.
Yeah.
How is that?
Well, there are too many speculations about the future in fiction which are too dystopian. The earth is just a sort of desert. The wind is blowing. Everyone's wrapped in a blanket heading into a force 10 gale. Here I'm just drawing a line from what's already apparent in the first quarter of this century, is that we'll have non-stop crises, but we'll somehow scrape through unless we have an all-out nuclear weapon exchange. And that, generations will adapt. And it could be pretty dark. I mean, we have climate change, the knock-on effect of climate change is going to be massive immigration on scales that nobody can imagine, I mean, in the tens of millions. In Europe, we're sitting on top of a huge continent of Africa. If temperatures get to the 45, 50, people will just not be able to live there, and coming north will be their only option. But somehow institutions will remain, universities will scrape through, and so I was interested in science fiction without the science.
Exactly.
What happens to history? What happens to love affairs? What happens to the museums? They'll get themselves to the top of mountains or high hills.
And to poetry and literature, which remains.
It remains. It keeps going. It doesn't have... So this was one element that was important in the book. Having someone 100 years ahead looking back at us and also feeling a great deal of envy.
Yes.
So I wanted the reader to remember to treasure what we have.
Yes.
As well as be alive to the disasters that we might be making for ourselves. So that's the double element of this. Yes, there is a strong element of pessimism, but also a sense that just like nature itself, if you stop doing bad things to it, it pushes back at an incredible rate. Mm-hmm. We have 100 square miles of ocean off the coast of northwest Scotland, no fishing, no bottom scraping to get bottom feeding shells and things. It has pushed back marine life, fish, plants, over the last 6 years, and it's astounded biologists. So I think we share something with that. Mm-hmm. So there's my thread of optimism. We too are part of biological life, and we are very good at it. We're very inventive, and we can scrape through is about as good as I'll put it.
Yeah, but by the way, scraping through sounds okay. I thought I read something about how you were hoping, and I felt that this would be a conversation between our past, our present, and our future.
Yeah.
What were you hoping the conversation would be about?
Well, the novel is set in 2 time zones, 100 years and now. And I think of us wedged between 2 sets of ghosts. We've got the ghosts of the past, about which we know something but not everything, and the ghosts of the future, people we'll never meet, and we know very little about them. All we can do is speculate. And we always tend, of course, we think of ourselves somehow on the summit of history. We are alive. Everything is so self-evidently important, and our lives are more important than the ones that are past and the ones that are to come. And I wanted to get these 3 sets of ghosts, because we will become the future's ghosts. We will join the ghosts of the past. I wanted to get these 3 levels talking to each other. So the novel is really suffused with a sense that those 2 other elements are always in the third. And the reader get a strong sense of what we would look like seen from 100 years' time, and what it's like to suddenly become those ghosts, speaking to us, say, on the page. I don't know if I'm successful. It's for others to judge, but that was the ambition.
Mm-hmm. The book is also based around a poem, which is a true poem, a real poem that John Fuller wrote. Is it right that he wrote it for his wife?
Yes, he wrote. I mean, it's 15 sonnets. It's a tough read, but John Fuller's poem is a real joy. It'll be published in November,
yes,
by the way. It has a lot of quite oppressive rules. The last line of one poem has to be the first line of the next. The last poem has to be all the first lines of the preceding 14 and make really good sense. And when I read it, when it was published about 4 years ago, I was swept away by it. Read it over and over again, sent it to friends. I didn't think for a moment I'd be writing a novel that would have such a poem in it. It just left such a big mark on me. It's so affectionate. And unusually for literature, it was celebrating long love. Mm-hmm. They'd been married 60 years. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to both celebrate the end of a lockdown, which is why Corona is quite a nice overlap, and the fact that they've been together 60 years, and just express the fact that soon they must part, because they're both going to die, one before the other. So that was the spur. And I'm no poet. I couldn't write. People keep asking me, why didn't you write a Corona, 15 sonnets? And And I did in my first draft quote, as it were, quite a lot of separate lines from it. And I gave it to a close friend who's always one of my first readers. And he liked the novel very much, but, there are always a few stings in the tail coming. He said, listen, don't be offended, but you're no poet. So, and like all good notes, it's a matter of instant recognition. You know he's right.
So have you ever written poetry? I've
written a few poems. I take the view that if you're going to be a poet, you've got to settle down to it in your early 20s and dedicate yourself to it. I don't take seriously people who become poets because they've written a poem.
Or a poem, yes.
Or a poem.
Well, because we would all be poets.
Yes, it requires dedication and doing a lot of reading and understanding and thinking and talking about poetry. Mm-hmm. I'm a great reader of poetry. You should see me read a poem. A lot of frowning.
A lot of frowning because you're trying to analyze what's happening?
No, what I mean is that I read lines over and over again. I think it is the senior service. It dates, back to prehistory. It celebrates the moment. It's got a close alliance with dance, with the very pulse of our heartbeats and our being. And it's a great celebrator often, but also, of course, it can, with heart-rending moments, give us some of the worst sides of human nature and experience. Whereas the novel, the last 200 or 300, 400 years, some people claim all kinds of earlier texts as novels, but I think of it really as coming out of the late 17th and 18th centuries, really. Mm-hmm. So it's, in that sense, it's froth in the world of literature. Yes, it's got a long way
toddler.
to go. Yeah.
You write about the process of writing and how you find such pleasure in it.
Yeah.
Has your process changed over the years?
Absolutely. I used to sweat over every sentence, sometimes holding a whole sentence in my mind so long that I'd forgotten the beginning of it by the time I reached the end of it. And slowly, that all dropped away. And the pleasure is understated by novelists who all want to, at some point in their lives, talk about the heroic struggle to finish this novel that's sitting on your lap. But for me, I'm always waiting for those moments when you just melt onto the page, you forget you exist. Some people call that process flow. Mm-hmm. Yet you don't even know you're happy. You are just the thing you're writing and nothing else. Those are rare moments. Otherwise, it's just a sense, well, it's no longer a job, of course, it's just a way of being. So if you're making progress, this is beyond whether you think you're writing the right thing, but just making progress, because novels are so long. They can occupy you for 2 or 3 years. Getting to the end of the first draft is probably the most exciting bit for me. Everything else is a sort of diminishing return. Working on that first draft, so to maybe 10 drafts later, you have what you want. And then there's a very communal, the moment your publisher is on board, and there's a cover design, and there's a committed line editor, and it ceases to be a solitary thing, and that's actually very delightful.
Are you an extrovert? Do you like touring and talking with readers? It seems like in some ways you have found to.
As long as I don't do it all the time, and it's still early days, you catch me fresh on talking about this novel. By the time I've been through Sweden, France, Germany, Italy, Holland, I might be getting a little weary, not of the person asking me questions, but of my own voice.
Yes.
Just beginning to sound a little hollow in my ears.
Because you're answering the same questions over and over.
Inevitably. People have read the same book. Mm-hmm. But I like on-stage discussion. I get a kind of energy from that. It's really thrilling. Even when I'm, sometimes I wake up and think, I've got to do this thing tonight. I'm too tired. I'm going to cancel. You can't cancel. But as soon as you get there, there's I guess, all kinds of people, from stand-up comedians to rock guitarists, must get this sense. Although, of course, literary events are much more subdued. Thank God. But there is a lovely energy coming off because you're talking to a self-selected group of people who are interested in what you do.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back again a little bit to your childhood. You loved to read. I always find that readers, and it has changed in my lifetime, so just personally, love to read for different reasons.
Yeah.
When you were a young boy, you lived all over the world.
Yes.
Your father was in the military.
Yeah.
What was it about reading that you so longed for?
I guess I read for exciting stories. I mean, both my parents left school at 14. We were not a literary household, but they were committed to the idea of a public library. So living in North Africa, for example, every Tuesday, my brother and sister, much older, they'd left home. We went off to this library on the other side of Tripoli, Libya. It was inside an army barracks. It was not the best of libraries, and the children's section was completely separate in another room. And my parents had never grown up with classics, so they had nothing to recommend me. No one read to people in bed, to children in bed.
Yes.
So I just found my way through it. Sometimes I read a book on the basis of its cover. I read a lot of sort of heroic Second World War stories. I just discovered Enid Blyton all by myself. You know, she was banned for a while in Britain from libraries. Librarians decided she was a bad influence.
Wow.
Because her prose was so terrible. It was terrible. I can now tell you that. But it was so seductive, so compelling. So I read all of that, and it's shaped me a bit now. When I was 13 or 14 years old, I read a book called The Go-Between, L.P. Hartley. It's about a boy who's at a boarding school, and he comes from a very poor family, but his friend comes from a grand family, goes to stay in a grand house, and he becomes the letter bearer in an illicit love. The smart young woman of this household falls in love with a guy who's a tenant farmer, labourer, an illicit love affair. That had some effect, by the way, on my writing of Atonement. But anyway, at one point, it's very hot summer, and as the temperature rises on the thermometer outside the glass house, he's waiting to see it reach 100. Meanwhile, this torrid affair goes on, also a kind of heat wave. And it says then, as you turn the page, that week's copy of Punch, which was a satirical weekly, everyone read it, and Punch was wiping his forehead with a cloth on the cover. And in this inspirational moment, I crossed the library where all the bound copies of Punch were left. Now, this novel was set in 1900. There was a beautiful old library. There were the editions for 1900. I opened it, turned it to July, and it was true. There was Punch wiping his brow. And that crossover of the fictional and the real, for me, was such a thrill. And if I could mark a point at which I became a writer, I think it was that mix, that moment, that mix of invention and fact that bowled me over.
Grounded in this truth.
So it felt like all the imagined stuff was true too.
Yes.
And I became that boy. So you asked me at the outset when I started writing, and I talk about being at university.
Yes.
But I could mark that moment. It helped me shape a novel that I wrote when I was in my early 50s, Atonement.
Atonement is, of course, many people's favorite books. I was asked to do what I thought were some of the best books of the 100 years, and I said Atonement. Because
Thank you. That's very nice.
Well, I mean, I wasn't the only one. I loved it. And I've read that you don't want to just be known for that. Is there...
Well, I don't want to be known for only that.
Yes.
Because I think I went through a very good patch of novels that included Machines Like Me, Chesil Beach, The Children Act, and recently Lessons. I understand when people read one novel of one writer that they've been so satisfied that they don't want to read anything else.
Yes. I have the opposite way. I read one novel and then I go back to read everything else.
Yes, well, you're my kind of reader. From my point of view, and of course everyone makes their own judgments on this, but I've had a very good 15 years. Someone always asks, what is your favourite novel? Mm-hmm. And I always choose the least read, which is a novel called Black Dogs. And afterwards, the bookshop that's selling books afterwards say, well, we only had 2 copies and they went straight away. So,
but is it really your favorite?
No. Now the truth can be told. I'm very fond of it. But somehow it slipped through the net. I mean, it was published, it did okay, got very nice reviews, but I'm never asked about it. It seemed to have, crept under a stone. So I like to kick that stone over and
remind
people back to it. Yeah.
Are there things or ideas that you still long to write about?
Yes, loads of things. In fact, there's too much. I mean, we live in very interesting times, of course, and that's our curse. And there's an awful lot to write about. This thing that I've been turning over, but I can't see yet a way to do it, is something about the end of childhood. How kids are not having the joy of unsupervised play, of building things together without adults around, falling out about it, quarrelling, having to deal with it. Great method of socialization, becoming, a social person, running free. In the 50s, kids played out in the street, and the traffic drove them indoors, and now the internet keeps them indoors. And I'm thinking back to how slowly literature began to take children seriously. I mean, everyone mentions Dickens. I think Jane Austen was one of the first to really look into the hearts of children. Little Fanny Price in Mansfield Park,
yes.
Homesick, and her lovely cousin consoles her and gets stuff so that she can write a letter home with. And of course, he's the one that she's going to marry, not all the wrong uns that come in and fill up the interweaving 300 pages. Because in Austen, it's not only rationality that powers love, it's kindness. James Joyce, of course, was a great inhabitor of children's minds. And Henry James, What Maisie Knew, a child looking on as a marriage breaks up. Brilliantly done, because he gets inside the child's mind. So how to bring all those things, it needs warmth. I mean, I don't want to write a dissertation about the internet and children's childhoods. So I'm turning that over as a subject, because I've spoken to so many people who can't unstick their children from their screens, but nor can they unstick themselves.
Exactly.
So,
but I have 3 children.
Yeah.
And one way to unstick them is not to give them a phone. My daughter's 13; she's the only one.
Yeah.
But I think, regardless, there's this longing to. There are 2 folds. It's what Jonathan Haidt's trying to do.
Yeah.
It's yes, there's an addiction to phones across the board. And also, kids aren't allowed to be free. We're micromanaging every single thing.
Yeah. And if something goes wrong in the life of a child, and it's across all the news media, it really stabs at your heart if you're a parent.
So then kids aren't allowed to fail.
Yeah. Our grandchildren, so the oldest is 11, and she's only just got, and it's a dumb phone.
Yes.
She just started at big schools.
Yes.
You need to know how she is and where she is and so on. And she has no interest in it. Yep. But the peer pressure is the problem. In the UK, in a school, in a classroom of 30 kids, there may be 3 kids who don't have a smartphone. And schools are beginning to ban them too.
Thank goodness.
It's gone crazy. But still, there's all those other hours. I think that we are in real danger of something that come along that we invent and fills us with delight and romanticism. Back in the early 90s, it was going to liberate humankind. And it's come at us in all kinds of other ways now, changing maybe even the matter of consciousness itself. So the loss of childhood is a loss to humanity. And the childhood I'm referring to is that sense that, yes, of course, grown-ups are around, but they're not directing the play. The play has to be directed by the children. But how to get in that subject, how to get inside it, is the issue.
Something tells me you'll do it.
You can talk about it.
Yeah.
But
I think you've got to find the right human.
Yeah, the right human. Who tells the story? And these are always the first things in a novel.
Is it the parents or is it the kids?
Is it the parents or is it the kids? Is it the first person?
Yeah, or is
it
all
the second person even? Or the third person? Do you play God so you can zoom in and out of all the characters' minds? Where to stand? Archimedes said, give me a place to stand and I could move the earth. He was talking about a lever. Of course, there was nowhere to stand outside in zero gravity. But where to stand is a sort of interesting question at the beginning of any piece of fiction.
I can't wait to read it when you write it.
I can't wait.
You've got to figure out who's standing and where they're standing.
I can't wait to finish the first draft.
That feeling. Speaking of the internet and the time we live in, I read that, and frankly, I worry a little bit about AI and how it will affect art and creativity. Because when, a child is told to write a creative writing piece and they could just go to their phone or their laptop or whatever and create something without critical thinking, it worries me for many reasons. But I guess I read that your son said, write a story in Ian McEwan's style.
It was terrible.
Was it?
It wasn't even embarrassing. It was so terrible.
What did that tell you about AI and the lack of the stronghold over creativity, I hope, and art?
I've been following AI since the early 70s, and it was always a nowhere subject because they were trying to imitate the human brain. We have just short of 100 billion neurons. Each of those neurons, on average, has 7,000 connections, and it all runs on the energy of about 25 watts. I mean, what could we do in the face of that? It's only when we move away from the idea of let's try and imitate the brain, let's try and just scrape the internet. There is a giant sort of communal space and language, and then we get, we've now ended up, and it's all happened in 3 or 4 years with large language models. It's a form of imitation, but AI can't break its leg or fall in love or get COVID or lose a parent or a child. So all those experiences that are the stuff of novels have to come to us secondhand. And we're reading a kind of imitation of an imitation. We're not even looking at the brain, we're looking at the internet for a start. So it might get convincing, but I don't think it can ever be profound because it's not embodied. It's not sitting inside this frail thing that is, if you injure it, it's quite hard to repair. And there are hospitals all around us, great repair shops, and they're only quarter successful. So for the moment, at least, I'm not too troubled. Maybe in 10, 15, the speed of this, 10, 15 years, who knows. Then we might get to the point where we have a masterpiece every other week. The masterpiece of, just imagine those who are afraid of it most. Okay, we get an Anna Karenina, we get Middlemarch. Maybe then readers will start saying, well, what were they worried about? We're now living in a world of riches, and we are the ones who invented AI, so we can take pleasure at least in that.
I just want to end with, because we started with reading and how it led you to this life's work. What are some of your favorite books? What do you love to read now?
I've got very attached to the kind of writers who want to give us some kind of report of what it is like to be now in a city, in modernity, surrounded by the internet and AI, modern love. I know so many people who met their dates online. In Jane Austen's novels, they meet at a dance in the pump hall. The men over here, the women over here, and then these rather elaborate dances which are so boringly portrayed for us on TV and movies. And I think, oh, not another dance and that terrible music. I want fiction that's got that pulse of now. So, 2 examples. I read a lovely novel by a young Dutch woman, which is called We Had to Remove This Post. It's about a group of young people working for a big tech company taking down disgusting posts, and it gradually drives them nuts. And the other one is did quite well here in the States. It translated from the Italian, called Perfection.
Oh, yeah.
Young Italians living in Berlin trying to perfect their lives through social media, and then it all sort of slowly corrupts itself. And here's the spoiler, they end up in an analog world trying to run a hotel with the dirty dishes and sheets piled up. It's a wonderful transition. But that told me things I didn't know about the world, and that's why I love Saul Bellow so much, and John Updike, and Toni Morrison. They really did give us back the world. So my interest in magical realism has faded away a bit. I want the real.
Well, thank you so much for this lovely conversation. I
real.
loved this book. I found hope in it in a time where I think hope is necessary. Optimism is like breath. And it was also the real. It was also the real about the world we live in and the world we could live in. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. And don't forget, you can catch the Today Show every morning on NBC or take Today when you're on the go. Just follow the Today podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.